Now, this is what we're talking about. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. Those words, without form and void, only appear in one other place, and that's in the beginning, first couple verses of Genesis. So we've got an anomaly here that most people have probably never put together, and we're going to put it together real quick for people's place, was a wilderness. And all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord and by his fierce anger. For thus hath the Lord said, the whole land shall be desolate, yet will I not make a full end. For this shall be earth more, and the heavens above be black, because I have spoken and cursed it, will not understand it, neither will I turn back from it. Now, what we're talking about in dealing with the subject matter this morning that Tim and I are going to kind of lay out for the believers and also for interested parties that believe that, the Bible is not relevant. When you have without form and void, those words are tohu and bohu in the Hebrew, and when they're used once in the Jeremiah passage, which obviously is after Noah's flood, and once before the flood, you're dealing with an anomaly there that is easy to explain, but it has fantastic repercussions. When Tim and the film crew went to the Altiplano in Peru and Bolivia, and they saw the architecture of both pre-flood,
which is nowhere, but everywhere. In consequence to that, they found out antimatter has a specific type of energy signature that they can, in fact, detect. This is how it's part of the process of pulling it out. Now, with the general basis of what CERN is doing, that's the basic idea of what they're doing, and that's exactly what they're doing with particles. Here comes the other part that's not so good. This is why they have to do another set of it. Listen, it's not just one experiment they're about to perform. This thing is going to run 6 months continuously, colliding protons near the speed of light to analyze particles, exotic particles that are made at the beginning of the Big Bang. That's why they call it the Big Bang machine. It's the only way to observe these particles, which wink in and out of existence in, a fraction of time. A fraction of time. And the consequence of this search to gather more and more of this matter, by the way,
when Matt Yuschik uses constant contact email marketing to promote his cycling studio, classes fill up fast. It's also easy.
Which is why they need to know the properties of some more properties.
And post-flood, it's really important, Sheila, that people understand that we're dealing with legends, myths, oral traditions, and historical accounts prior to the flood of Noah of a gigantic world differing from the world after Noah. There were, by the way, giants in the earth both before the flood and after the flood. That's what Genesis 6 states. But what we found in our, if you will, the Rosetta Stone of pre-flood and post-flood culture was simply amazing. And Tim, I'll turn it over to you now and just share how they stand in contrast to each other and take it for as long as you want to take it.
Okay. We're putting together our documentary series, True Legends. We're putting together information for people. We're putting the pieces together to demonstrate to people that the Bible explains, gives an explanation for what are seen as the mysteries of antiquity and obviously also the mysteries of the prophetic future. And they relate to each other, as Steve said. In order to understand what's going on now and what's going to happen in the future, we absolutely have to understand what happened in the past, and the deep past, the archaic past, the world before the flood of Noah. There's a lot of people waking up right now, even in the mainstream populace, to the idea that history is not what we've been told, because there's a lot of programs coming out now. There's a lot of stuff floating around on the internet where it's obvious when you take a good look at some of these, especially some of these megalithic archaeological sites, that something is amiss. History could not have unfolded in the way that we're taught. At least much of history could not have unfolded in the way that we're taught in school, as it pertains to ancient history, what's known as Neolithic or antiquated history. So we are dealing with a time in which the giants walk the earth, but not only giants, all kinds of hybrid entities, according to the Bible, according to some of the extra biblical texts like the book of Enoch and the book of Giants. And we're discovering, and we're documenting the evidence that narrative is in fact true. And in Peru, as Steve mentioned, there's a lot of megalithic constructions. And for those who don't know what megalithic constructions are, just the word megalith means basically building stuff with oversized stones, massive stones. And we see a lot of that kind of construction happening in the dateless past. And so in Peru,
Has it caused them to rethink the origin of our universe? Well, new and more powerful telescopes have unlocked mysteries about our universe never before revealed, giving us amazingly scientific insight into
A lot of people know me by
life
Shaun, but
form on
I
this
really
planet.
delve
science
into a lot
discovered
of
They
God.
found out that
science,
energy
DNA, transhumanism.
Wait a
is
minute.
the same
Hasn't-
energy signature.
Boy, you can name the
all
topic, and
life
I've covered
on
it
this
in
planet.
over 300 hours
Science
of
discovered
podcast
God.
just in the past year. And I'm
Found
not trying
out
to
when
puff myself
any
up,
life
I'm just trying
form
to
in the
let people
presence
know
of
that there's
antimatter
a wealth of information out there.
the dichotomy between what we consider to be pre-flood constructions, in other
Well,
words, constructions
Einstein
that were
didn't
built
believe it
before
was
the flood
possible.
of Noah, and post-flood constructions that were built after the flood of Noah. And what a
So
lot
here's
of
the
the
question.
ancients did, including the Inca, who were the
Has
primary
science discovered
native
God?
populace in Peru, at least
Well,
before the
Einstein
conquistadors
didn't
arrived,
believe it was possible.
they, just like many other cultures across the planet, built on top of the pre-flood stuff that was in many cases built by giants. So many of these ancient
Stephen
native
Hawking said
peoples
it
came
might be
and
the
found
greatest
the
scientific
constructions
discovery
of
of
the
all
giants
time.
and of these other entities, and they built.
part of their makeup. It's what you can't live in a material world without antimatter. Nothing would exist.
Not only
And
that
so
I'm
a
presenting,
person
but
has
you
both
guys are doing a
good-
great job of presenting
good
it to your
energy,
guests
which
as
would
well.
be this realm.
And I think this is the
realm
leading
of
show.
matter. But they also have energy of antimatter. So they're
So,
connected.
what discovery has
A person
baffled the
is
greatest
connected
scientific
to
minds of
both
the past
realms
century?
at the same
Why
time
has it
on
caused
the
them
energy
to
level.
rethink
They
the
don't even
origin
know
of our
it.
universe?
They don't know it. And they have found with certain
AMKS
with
got
all
us
the
radio. So what you
experiments they
think?
found,
Too fair
they
to say,
have
girl,
found out
heart.
why
But you already,
paranormal activity exists. They know exactly what it is. They don't want to tell anybody. This is why they perpetuate foolishness on television. But every life form connected to that realm, that other realm, into this realm of reality all the time. Now, a person's thoughts, how a person feels, and doctors know about this too, how a person feels will determine which energy they draw from. You can draw from
Well,
this
new
realm.
and more powerful
Good realm.
telescopes have
And
unlocked
you have
mysteries
positive
about our
results, and
universe
that's called
never before
faith.
revealed,
That's why doctors believe
giving
in it.
us
That's why they give
amazingly
out
scientific
placebos. They know
insight
that if
into
a
the
person
origin of life.
believes something is helping them,
Has science
they have it
discovered
within
God?
themselves to repair. They can command
Hasn't
their
science
bodies to be
proven
repaired
we
simply
don't
based
need
on
God
faith.
to explain the
And
universe?
people think they work.
What is it about this discovery that is so fundamentally different? Why has it stunned the scientific world? Well, this discovery, along with what molecular biologists have learned about the sophisticated coding
Factual,
within
hard-hitting
DNA,
information.
now many scientists now
And I try to
admit
keep my answer.
that the universe and life itself appear to be
Built on
part
top
a
of them
great
because
design.
they could not rival them.
One
And
cosmologist put it this way.
Fantastic
Many
repercussions.
scientists
When Tim and the film crew went to the Altiplano in Peru and
the design
Bolivia.
argument. Surprisingly, many scientists who are now talking about God have no religious belief whatsoever. So,
People have
what are
recovered
these
from
stunning
cancer.
discoveries
People
that
have
have
recovered
scientists
from
suddenly
back
speaking
injuries.
of God?
Well,
Well, there are three revolutionary discoveries.
simply by their own faith. This other realm, because that energy is contained in injuries. Quadriplegics have been repaired simply by their own faith. This recovered from back injuries. Quadriplegics have been repaired simply by their own faith. Injuries. Quadriplegics have been repaired simply by their own faith. This other
Yes.
realm, because
And
that energy
they saw the architecture of both pre-flood and post-flood. It's really important, Sheila, that people understand that we're dealing with legends, myths, oral traditions, and historical accounts of prior to the flood of Noah of a gigantic world differing from the world after Noah. There were, by the way, giants in the earth both before the flood and after the flood. That's what Genesis 6 states. But what we found in our, if you will, the Rosetta Stone of pre-flood and post-flood culture was simply amazing. And Tim, I'll turn it over to you now and just share how they stand in contrast to each other and take it for as long as you want to take it.
Okay.
3. DNA coding reveals intelligence. The statements leading scientists have made about these discoveries may shock you.
Has science discovered
the universe
God,
had
God,
a one-time beginning. Since the dawn of civilization, man has gazed in awe at the stars, wondering what they are.
Has science discovered God,
Although on a
God,
clear
God?
night, the unaided human eye can see only about
Has
6,000
science
stars. Hubble and other powerful
discovered
telescopes reveal there are a billion stars clustered in over 100 billion galaxies. In fact, our sun is like one grain of sand amidst the world's beaches. But prior to the 20th century, the majority of scientists believed our own Milky Way galaxy was the entire universe, and that only about 100 million stars existed. Most scientists in the past
we're putting together our documentary series True Legend. We're putting together information
space and energy.
Has
all sorts of mysteries of the prophetic future, and they relate to each other, as Steve said. In order to understand what's going on now and what's going to happen in the future, we absolutely have to understand what happened in the past and the deep past.
Calculated that everything in the universe, including matter, energy, space, and even time itself, actually had a beginning. Well, shockwaves hit the scientific community. Many scientists, including Einstein, reacted negatively. In what Einstein later called the biggest blunder of my life, he fudged the equations to avoid the implication that the universe had a beginning.
antimatter,
Perhaps the most
Stargate,
vocal adversary of the idea that the universe had a beginning was
British astronomer Sir Frederick Hoyle.
who sarcastically
Big
nicknamed
Bang.
the creation event the
Now we
Big
get
Bang.
into the heart of the matter.
He stubbornly held to
What's
his
actually-
steady-state
there
theory
will
that
be
the universe had always
It's
existed.
just that there have been consequences before. Nobody took notice, and the energy signature of dark matter, which, by the way, resides in. But once you bring it into this realm,
talking about this
where we
before
can
the show,
actually see it, observe it,
in the video,
it attracts
there
things
is
from the other realm.
it shows
Dark matter is
a new type
tied
of
to dark
telescope or
matter.
a new
Everything
way
has a
of assembling
connection.
the telescope
Everything has a
that
connection.
is different
That
from the
connection
Galileo
can never
model
be
of
broken
telescopes.
by
Yeah, I mean,
any
we'd have thought
thing.
that, number one, and number two.
If they bring dark matter into
Well,
this
so did
realm,
Einstein and other
it will
scientists
connect
until
to
the
that
evidence
realm
for
where the
beginning
dark
became
matter.
What's really going
How
on?
far away they
The logical
put it in
conclusion
where
No,
was
world,
like the
world,
proverbial
that realm
elephant in the
everywhere
room,
we go.
namely that something or someone beyond scientific investigation must have started it all.
Has science
Then finally,
discovered God?
Facilities of where they once kept dark matter in a college. I won't name it for the sake of the college, but the university. They had to move it to a deep underground facility because of what was happening to the people.
Be the first, I think, reaction when you look at the images that are captured on standard single reflex.
Over the past
lens
60
camera.
years,
This
Dove
is a
Beauty
phenomenal
Bar's superior
dual
formula
telescope
has remained
that's been
unchanged.
set up,
But when
and
it
they're fairly small. I mean, they're just things that you can carry around yourself. We're not talking about an observatory like Mount Graham in Arizona. But we'll get to that in a moment. But
Have the
this
ability
is a
to
project.
crunch the numbers,
in
and the
the past,
numbers are
you've heard me talk
generated
about the
for the
Thunderbolts project in terms of the electric universe. Well, this is a similar name in the sense that it's called Thunder Energies Corporation. So a little synchronicity going on with the names there. But Thunder Energies
examining the
is out of
trajectory,
Florida.
the
And
spin
Dr.
rate of
Centilli
quantum
is the chief
particles,
scientist of Thunder
the
Energies
mass,
Corporation. And he's the one
their
who has
energy,
been
their
doing,
mass
I
energy
would say,
equivalent.
about 50 years
So there's a
research
number of
into
things
antimatter
for each
itself that has
individual
developed his own
particle
mathematical
that they're
language, which is a complete
looking at,
departure
and
from
they're
the standard model
generating
of
billions of
mathematical
particles per
language
collision
and trigonometry.
called high luminosity. And therefore, it's an overwhelming
The Kobe satellite
task for a
experiments
classical computer
proved that the universe
utilizing
really
transistors to
did
do.
have a one-time
You're
beginning,
talking
an
about,
incredible flash of light and
oftentimes
energy.
people will see pictures
Although
of the
some
servers
scientists called it
residing
the
at
moment
CERN.
of creation,
Well, that's well
most
and
preferred
good,
referring
but
to
when you
it
get
as the
into
Big Bang.
the higher luminosity
Astronomer Robert
collisions that
Jastrow
are
tries
occurring
to
in
help us imagine
2016,
how it all began.
you have the ability
The
to
picture suggests
just
the
swamp your
explosion of a
server
cosmic hydrogen bomb. The instant in which
Singed
the
and
cosmic bomb
fried by
exploded.
that kind of energy. But explain why it is that kind of energy and what it really means in terms of like heat,
There's a lot of
light
people
generated,
waking
and all
up
that
right
kind
now,
of stuff.
Even in the mainstream
Yeah, the short
populace,
answer
to
is we're
the
dealing
idea
with
that history is not what
of
we've been
duration
told, because there's a lot of
of
programs
the
coming out now.
extremely high
There's a lot of stuff
temperatures.
floating around
And
And
on
therefore,
the
they
internet
pose no
where
risk
everything
to
in
the
the
it's
outside
obvious.
environment,
You
to
could look at some of
humanity
these, especially
themselves.
some of these megalithic
So
archaeological
let's
sites.
define the
Science is
energy.
unable
So
to
we're
tell us
talking about
what
tera-electron volts,
This
caused
peta-electron
history
volts.
could not have
We're
unfolded
talking about the
in the
mass
way
energy
that we're
equivalency
taught.
of
At least
each
much of history could not have
individual
unfolded in the
particle.
way that we're taught
Now,
in school,
the
as it
analogy
pertains
at
to
the
ancient history,
tera-electron volt
what's
level,
known as
let's use 10 tera-electron volts as an example, often cited by the supporters of what is going on at CERN, and causing these eddy currents like you would find along the edges of the banks of a river. Now that's very plausible in that the universe is actually composed of tetrahedrons, and this is both at the quantum scale and also at the cosmological scale, that the
AMKS
universe
got
is
us.
arranged in
Radio,
tetrahedrons. These are
Yes, they believed in the flood. And when we say the flood, we're talking about the flood of Noah. They believed that the giants before the flood were much larger than the giants after the flood. This is biblical information that the natives understood before the conquest happened in Peru. In other words, before Catholicism came to the shores of South America, which obviously validates the biblical narrative. And the natives believed not only that there were giants before and after the flood, and that the giants before the flood were much larger, but they worshipped them. And how did they worship them? They worshipped them in the form of their mummified or skeletal remains. In other words, they took the skeletal and mummified remains of giants, again, historically documented, they enshrined them, and they worshiped them as gods. And in fact, they enshrined them, they dressed them in kumbi. And kumbi is the ceremonial cloth that was used by the Inca.